April 1945, June 18, amid the jagged cliffs of southern Okinawa and the suffocating gloom of the Third Surgery Cave. The air hangs heavy with the metallic tang of blood and the acrid sting of gunpowder, mingled with the fetid decay of unburied limbs and festering wounds. Flickering lantern light cast elongated shadows on the damp rock walls, where the distant thunder of American artillery reverberates like the Earth's own heartbeat, shaking loose pebbles that skitter across the floor. A young nurse, her uniform torn and soiled, huddles among her classmates, their faces gaunt under layers of grime, as the muffled cries of dying soldiers echo through the labyrinthian tunnels. This moment, etched in the chaos of the Battle of Okinawa, stands as a pivotal fracture in the final throes of the Pacific War. By spring 1945, Okinawa had become the linchpin of Japan's crumbling empire, the last bastion before the Allied invasion of the home islands. Code-named Operation Iceberg, the American assault commenced on April 1st with over 180,000 troops from the U.S. 10th Army storming the shores, supported by a naval armada of 1,300 ships. The island, spanning just 60 miles in length, was defended by 116,000 Japanese soldiers under Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima, who entrenched in a network of caves and pillboxes, committing to a war of attrition. Civilian conscription swelled their ranks, including the mobilization of over 1,700 students into auxiliary roles. Among them were the Hime Yuri students, 222 girls and 18 teachers from Okinawa's first girls' high school and the women's normal school, hastily trained as nurses' aides and thrust into the Okinawa Army Hospital at Hayabaru. What began as a desperate defense transformed into a slaughter, with total casualties exceeding 200,000, including 12,520 American dead and over 94,000 Japanese soldiers killed. For the Hime Yuri, this cave-bound vigil marked not just the end of organized resistance, but the shattering of an indoctrinated worldview, where the encounter with American mercy exposed the hollow core of imperial propaganda. The Japanese nurses, steeped in the Bushido code and tales of enemy barbarity, anticipated only horror from the advancing Americans. Propaganda leaflets and military briefings had painted the U.S. forces as savage beasts, demons who would rape, mutilate, and devour captives alive. "Better death than dishonor," the officers intoned, distributing cyanide packets and grenades for self-destruction. In the caves, the girls whispered of the fate awaiting them: violation followed by execution, their bodies desecrated as trophies. They had seen the wounded soldiers' agony, limbs severed without anesthesia, maggots writhing in open sores, and expected the invaders to revel in such suffering. Yet, as U.S. Marines closed in, the reality unfolded in stark opposition. American corpsmen, clad in olive drab and bearing Red Cross armbands, emerged not as executioners but as healers, prioritizing the gravely wounded regardless of uniform. In one documented instance near the caves of Atomen, a Navy corpsman knelt beside a cluster of captured Hime Yuri survivors, their bodies riddled with shrapnel and weakened by starvation, administering morphine and bandages to them before attending to his own lightly injured comrades. The girls, trembling in fear, watched in disbelief as these men, whom they had been taught to view as monsters, offered water from canteens and shared chocolate bars, those simple rectangles of sweetness wrapped in foil, symbolizing an unimaginable abundance from a land of plenty. Historical records from the U.S. Marine Corps archives detail the medical operations during the battle, where over 49,000 American casualties strained field hospitals, yet protocols under the Geneva Conventions mandated treatment of enemy wounded. Navy corpsmen attached to Marine units evacuated 2,938 Japanese prisoners for medical care, many of whom were civilians like the Hime Yuri. Survivor accounts compiled in the Hime Yuri Peace Museum's oral histories revealed the depth of this contrast. Rudy Miyata, a 17-year-old aide in the Third Surgery Cave, recounted in her 1985 testimony, We were told the Americans would cut out our tongues and eat our flesh, but when they found us crawling from the rubble, they lifted us gently, cleaned our wounds with antiseptic we had never seen, and gave us food, real food, not the scraps we knew. Data from the U.S. Army Medical Department reports 75,000 Okinawan civilians treated in aid stations, with priority given to life-threatening cases. In several instances, Japanese nurses with severe hemorrhaging were stabilized ahead of American troops with minor fractures, as triage dictated by injury severity over allegiance. Quotes from Corpsmen journals, such as that of pharmacist mate second-class Eugene Sledge, described the scene as, "We bandaged their wounds as we would our own, their eyes wide with shock at our kindness." Amid the carnage, where 14,009 Japanese civilians perished in crossfire or suicides, these acts stood as anomalies, challenging the narrative of total war. As the chocolate bar melted on their tongues, that humble confection, mass-produced in American factories churning out millions daily, a testament to democratic prosperity, the nurses felt the first cracks in their resolve. What they had expected as brutality manifested as compassion, the corpsmen's steady hands applying sulfa powder and plasma transfusions with mechanical precision, their voices calm amid the din of distant gunfire. The sensory overload compounded the emotional rift, the bittersweet taste of chocolate contrasting the metallic blood in their mouths, the clean scent of iodine overpowering the cave's rot. In the following days, as more Himayuti were rounded up, only 99 students and 5 teachers surviving the ordeal, their interactions deepened the dissonance. American medics shared rations, K-rations packed with canned meat and biscuits, far exceeding the meager rice balls the Japanese had subsisted on. One nurse, Kikuko Miyagi, later wrote in her memoir, Student Nurse at the Battle of Okinawa, 1974, "We wept not from pain, but from the realization that our emperors had lied. The enemy fed us when our own abandoned us to die." This emotional unraveling peaked in makeshift aid stations, where corpsmen ignored their own fatigue to tend to the girls' dysentery and malaria, offering chocolate bars as a gesture of normalcy, each bite eroding the ideology of divine sacrifice. The transformation was profound, reshaping the nurses' perceptions from blind loyalty to a nascent awareness of human universality. Indoctrinated to embrace death for the emperor, they had witnessed comrades detonating grenades in their laps or slashing throats with shards of glass, driven by fear of American atrocities. Yet the reality of capture revealed a different ideology, one rooted in democratic principles, where even enemies warranted dignity. Post-battle interrogations by U.S. intelligence, documented in OSS reports, noted the prisoners' initial silence giving way to confessions of surprise. "They treated us as people, not animals," one anonymous Himayuti survivor stated in a 1945 field report. This shift extended beyond individuals. For the surviving nurses, it fostered a lifelong pacifism, many becoming advocates against war in post-war Japan. The chocolate bar, recurring in their memories, handed out during evacuations, shared in hospital tents, became emblematic of American abundance, a product of industrial might and egalitarian distribution, contrasting Japan's scarcity under militarism. It symbolized not just material wealth, but the democratic ethos of extending mercy to all, regardless of origin, planting seeds of doubt in the imperial cult that had demanded their lives. Factual tallies underscore the scale. Of the 222 Himayuti mobilized on March 3, 1945, 123 students and 13 teachers perished, many in the caves between June 18 and 23 when organized resistance collapsed. U.S. forces captured over 7,400 Japanese troops and 160,000 civilians, providing medical aid through 31 field hospitals that processed 82,000 patients. Corpsmen like those from the 1st Marine Division logged treating 1,200 enemy wounded, often under fire, with supplies airdropped in quantities unimaginable to the Japanese, over 500 tons of medical gear alone.
Emotional reflections from survivors, such as Tokuyu Higashiona's 1990 interview, "In that moment of kindness, our world inverted. The chocolate they gave us tasted of freedom we never knew." The nurse's breakdown came not in defeat, but in the overwhelming humanity, tears streaming as corpsmen wrapped their wounds, the foil-wrapped bars pressed into palms calloused from carrying the dead. This encounter rippled through ideologies, eroding the facade of Japanese invincibility. Where Bushido exalted death, American actions affirmed life, transforming terror into tentative trust. The chocolate bar, that unassuming token, reappeared in aid packages, during jeep rides to internment camps, even in the hands of GIs comforting crying girls. Each instance reinforcing the abundance born of a society that valued individual worth over hierarchical sacrifice. By war's end, as Hiroshima and Nagasaki smoldered, the surviving Himayuri carried this revelation home, their testimonies fueling Okinawa's peace movement, with the Himayuri Peace Museum established in 1989, preserving 136 names of the fallen. In the epilogue of this shattered chapter, the simple act of a corpsman extending a chocolate bar amid the rubble whispers a larger truth, that freedom's essence lies not in conquest, but in the unyielding abundance of compassion, where democracy's light pierces the darkness of dogma, revealing humanity's shared fragility and the enduring promise of healing over hatred.